I never thought my own sister-in-law would have the audacity to literally unhitch my livelihood from my truck while I was inside getting a coffee. But that's exactly what happened, and honestly, the look on her face when she realized she'd made the biggest mistake of her life was almost worth the chaos. She stood there in the gas station parking lot, hands on her hips, triumphantly declaring that I didn't need the trailer, and that she was taking it for her weekend project, completely ignoring the fact that I had just spent 5 figures on custom equipment housed inside it. I didn't even argue. I just stood there, calmly sipped my coffee, and pointed toward the glove compartment of my truck, telling her to take a good, hard look inside before she drove another inch. Was I wrong for letting her think she was in control for those few minutes? Or would you have done the exact same thing to watch her ego crumble? Tell me what you think, because the fallout from that single moment changed my family dynamic forever. It all started about 2 years ago when my wife's sister, Clara, decided she was suddenly an expert in professional landscaping and event planning. I had worked my tail off for years to build a specialized business that required high-end, heavy-duty gear, all of which I kept meticulously organized in a custom-built utility trailer. It wasn't just a trailer, it was my office, my warehouse, and my bank account on wheels. Clara had always been the type to view my success as a personal slight against her own lack of ambition, often making snide comments at family dinners about how I was obsessed with money or overworking myself. When I purchased the new top-of-the-line trailer, I made sure it was locked and secured with every piece of high-tech security gear I could find. Clara, meanwhile, was constantly asking to borrow things: a ladder, a power drill, a leaf blower, and she rarely returned them in the same condition. I started saying no, which sent her into a spiral of victimhood, complaining to my wife that I was stingy and unsupportive. That fateful Saturday, I was heading to a major job site, the biggest contract of my career, and I stopped at a local cafe to pick up some caffeine. I parked, checked the security pins on the hitch, and walked inside. When I came back out 5 minutes later, I saw Clara's SUV parked right behind my truck, and she was already in the process of fiddling with the release lever. I watched from the doorway for a second, absolutely stunned. She wasn't just trying to borrow it, she had a friend with her, and they were actively trying to rehitch it to her vehicle. She had convinced herself that since we were family, she had a divine right to my assets whenever she felt like it. I walked out, my heart hammering in my chest, and I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I just walked right up to her, and she had the nerve to sneer at me, telling me that she knew I didn't have any jobs scheduled for the weekend, and that she was doing me a favor by keeping it busy instead of letting it sit and rust. She honestly believed she was entitled to my primary source of income. She was so smug, so incredibly confident that I would just fold because she was family, that she didn't even notice the small blinking red light on my dashboard or the way I was looking at her with a mix of pity and cold calculation. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you exactly what happened when she opened that glove compartment and realized she had just triggered a security system that would make her life a nightmare, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let her keep it to avoid family drama? Or would you have taught her the lesson of a lifetime? I watched as she tossed her keys into her purse and started heading toward my truck, probably to find the paperwork to prove she had a right to use it or to find the spare key she thought she deserved. When she opened the glove compartment, she didn't find a key. She found the master remote for the internal immobilization system and the GPS tracker logs that were synced directly to my lawyer's office and the local police station. The glove compartment was essentially a trap. As soon as she pulled the document folder out, the alarm on the trailer, which was actually a high-decibel anti-theft siren, began to wail, and the trailer's wheels instantly locked up, embedding themselves into the asphalt. My truck, sensing an unauthorized disconnection and proximity to a non-paired vehicle, went into full lockdown mode, disabling the engine and flashing the hazard lights to alert anyone nearby. Clara shrieked, clutching her ears as the siren grew louder, and I calmly walked over, pulled out my phone, and played the live feed of her tampering with my vehicle for the police dispatch I had already contacted. She turned pale, her bravado completely evaporating as the sirens of an approaching cruiser joined the chorus of my alarm. She tried to babble some excuse about it being a misunderstanding, but the video evidence was undeniable, and her friend was already backing away, trying to distance herself from the crime. The police arrived, and because I had all the documentation of my business assets and the GPS tracking history, showing she had been tailing me, they didn't even entertain her excuses. They didn't arrest her, but they did issue a formal warning and a trespass notice that essentially banned her from coming within 50 feet of my work site or my equipment ever again. The fallout was explosive. My wife was caught in the middle, torn between her sister's hysterics and the cold, hard reality of what Clara had attempted. I didn't care about being the nice guy anymore. I demanded a formal apology and a signed agreement that she would never touch my property again, or I would press full charges for attempted theft and property damage. She didn't talk to me for months, and honestly, it was the most peaceful time of my life. The months that followed were an exercise in endurance, a slow-motion unraveling of a family dynamic that had been built on a foundation of shaky obligations and silent resentment. While Clara went into a self-imposed exile, posting cryptic, passive-aggressive updates on social media about narcissistic in-laws and the cruelty of family, I found myself dealing with the unintended consequences of my boundaries. My wife, Sarah, was the one who suffered the most, caught in a suffocating tug-of-war between her loyalty to her sister and her realization that my anger, which she had initially seen as harsh, was actually a completely justified reaction to a borderline criminal act. Every family gathering became an interrogation. My mother-in-law, who had always had a soft spot for Clara, would bring it up at the dinner table, subtly implying that I had trapped a family member for fun. It took me a long time to learn how to shut those conversations down. I started using the same cold, analytical tone I had used with Clara in the parking lot. I'd look them dead in the eye and say, if she had been anyone else, she would have been in handcuffs. I gave her the grace of not pressing charges, and that is where my flexibility ends. It wasn't easy. I lost sleep. I felt the stinging weight of judgment from people who didn't understand that my trailer wasn't just metal and tires. It was the result of thousands of hours of missed holidays, long nights away from home, and the literal sweat equity of my professional life. I realized that for years, I had been subsidizing Clara's entitlement by being the guy who could handle it. By saying no, by enforcing that boundary with the absolute finality of an alarm system, I wasn't just protecting a business asset. I was ending a cycle of enabling that had poisoned our family life for far too long. The real breakthrough didn't come from an apology from Clara. She was far too deep in her own narrative of victimization for that, but from Sarah finally coming to terms with the truth. She looked at the police reports, she read the transcript of the dispatch call, and she saw the sheer audacity of what Clara had done that day. When she finally acknowledged that my boundary was the only thing preventing a much worse catastrophe, the guilt began to fade. We started setting rules for other family members, too. No more unannounced visits, no more borrowing without written agreements, and absolutely no questioning our decisions regarding our finances or professional path. It turned out that the nightmare I had triggered for Clara was actually a wake-up call for the rest of my extended family. They stopped seeing me as a resource and started seeing me as a man who had earned his place in the world. It was a lonely road at times, and there were weekends where the silence in the house felt heavy, but it was a cleaner, more honest kind of silence. I learned that you don't owe anyone access to your life, your hard work, or your peace of mind just because they share a DNA pool with your spouse. True family supports your growth. They don't try to unhitch it from your truck because they think they deserve a cut of your success. Even now, nearly a year later, the echoes of that day at the gas station still linger. I often think about what might have happened if I hadn't installed those security upgrades. If I had been just a little less prepared, or if I had decided to be the nice guy one more time, I would have lost everything. I would have been left empty-handed, watching my livelihood being driven away by someone who didn't even understand the cost of what she was stealing. I've heard rumors from other family members that Clara eventually tried to start her own venture again, but this time without the benefit of my tools or my connections. She failed, of course, and instead of taking responsibility, she tells anyone who will listen that I sabotaged her from the start. Let her say it. The truth is, I didn't sabotage her. I just stopped being the crutch she used to prop up her own failure. There's a certain power in standing your ground, a clarity that only comes when you stop apologizing for your own success. I don't harbor any ill will toward her anymore, but I don't have space for her in my life either. We are strangers now, connected by a shared history that neither of us wants to revisit. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. I don't need a sister-in-law who views my sweat as her playground, and I certainly don't need her approval to validate the life I've built. My business is thriving. My marriage is stronger than ever because we finally have a united front. And most importantly, I sleep soundly every night knowing my property is mine and mine alone. When you look back at your own life, you'll realize that the people who get angry at your boundaries are the ones who are benefiting from your lack of them. That was the biggest lesson I took from the whole ordeal. The alarm system saved my trailer, but the decision to stick by those boundaries saved my dignity. If this story resonates with you, it's because you've likely been in a situation where you had to choose between being liked and being respected. I chose respect, and I would choose it again every single time. Even if it cost me the entire family. It's worth it. Your peace, your assets, and your boundaries are yours alone. Keep them locked, keep them secure, and never, ever feel guilty for refusing to let someone else drive off with what you've worked your entire life to build. If you were on my side and believe I did the right thing by teaching her a permanent lesson, please hit that like button to show your support, and make sure to subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and standing your ground. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below, and I'll see you all in the next story.